East side, B side, what side are you on?
Well, hello, hello, hello. Hope you missed us. Welcome back.
Welcome back. No,
Welcome
okay,
back. Welcome. We can't complete
we
that.
can't. No, can't do that because it's copyright material. But if you've seen a 70s sitcom, you know exactly where I was
Excuse me. Yes, I still have that cough. It's not going anywhere. How are you?
going. I am doing all right. I am enjoying what I'd like to call third winter up here in the upper Midwest.
Yes, yes, we're experiencing third winter as well.
It's very frustrating, but I can almost see sidewalks. We the snow drifts are ridiculous to the point where my puppy, who is not a big puppy, but she will climb up on these snow drifts to go, do her business up there, and we will be eye level. And then when they're done, I got to climb up there myself and clean up after. So I love how they've given up. Like they used to get frustrated that now they're just like, I'm gonna climb the whole thing. I don't care. I'm getting on top. I'm not gonna keep walking around till I find a spot that isn't as high. So uh, she's definitely adapted. But I'm ready for a little bit of sunshine. And if I could see some green grass at some point, I would be very excited.
Yeah, it's here it's like over the weekend it was 60 and then by like tomorrow we're supposed to have snow and I'm like, could you just pick one? Like it wouldn't I don't think be so bad if it was just one or the other. But then when you get the nice weather and you're like, ooh, maybe it's gonna be springtime, it's March.
Yeah,
And then it's like, no, we've got more snow and freezing temperatures for you.
I mean, it's to the point up here in Minnesota where if we hit 40 degrees, I see people in shorts, and I'm just like, this is an unhealthy relationship that we have with weather.
I think since we last spoke, I saw the movie Cocaine Bear, which I
Oh
don't
my
know if you've
goodness,
seen that. And
I haven't. It doesn't look like a horror, but it looks very like jump scary and silly. So I feel like it's going to be one that I have to watch at home when I have like I'm a little bit more. It's not as all encompassing as it is in a theater, but I've heard it's a lot.
it is a lot. It is a lot. And I've been telling people, like, whatever you think it is, that's probably what you're gonna get out of it. Like it's yeah, it is a lot. There's a lot of gore.
So like an in-depth portrayal of man's impact on nature and how we
Yeah. With a high bear. Uh-huh. Hmm.
yeah, because really, who's the bear here? Is the real monster humanity, which put the drugs in the natural environment? I think so.
um I, I started so I've been watching, of course, The Last of Us, and the current this coming week is the last episode of that. But following that, have to look forward to the new season of Ted Lasso.
Mm-hmm. Ted Lasso, and of course, we've got the Mandalorian just started as well. So Pablo is basically like propping up two streaming services just by himself.
I know. I know.
Just
And it's
kind of
so
amazing.
to me, he was on Graham Norton, which is a show out of UK, and I love getting like updates on Graham Norton because he was talking about when he had auditioned for um The Last of Us. He was filming for, it was either Mandalorian or they were wrapping up like Game of Thrones or something like that. So, he was in a completely different country in a completely different time zone. And like he had to stay up to do the audition. And then they were supposed to call him. And then he had taken like a sleeping aid. So he ended up falling asleep and they called him while he's on the sleeping aid to tell him that he got the role and he didn't remember. So he like woke up the next day and he's like, oh man, when are they going to call me about the role?
It's so weird they didn't call. They said they call.
They said they'd call, but so I thought that was pretty
I mean,
funny.
it is weird. Like medicated sleep is such a different beast, and I've tried. Which we've talked about millions of times. I don't have a real good relationship with sleep, but I've tried various sleeping aids, and I had a migraine a couple days ago and tried Advil PM for like the first time in a while, and my dreams are always pretty vivid. But I swear, when I take like anything that knocks me out for sleep,
Mm-hmm.
it is, I wake up the next morning and I like am checking if body parts are still around, if you're like I'm making sure that nothing happened in the world, like if there was a nuclear explosion in my dream, that did, it feels so real. So I can only imagine if you are living in the world of like Star Wars and also talking about a post-apocalyptical zombie show, and then you go to sleep. Like it's gonna be some weird dreams.
But it's a great show. I can't wait to see what they do with the last episode. Of course, cannot wait for season 3 of Ted Lasso. Oh, and it's
Which
so
they keep
exciting.
saying is going to be the last one.
Yeah, they said they have no definite plans. It's not actually like canceled or anything like that. They just, with this season, they've wrapped up the story arc that they wanted to tell. So,
Yeah, which I think is, then it should end. Like as much
yeah,
as I would love, I mean, as I love the show and I'd like to see more, I also feel like when you just make more because the money's there, it's not very good.
yeah, yeah.
Like see every Matrix movie after the Matrix.
Oh man. Oh, Apple TV Plus has a show with Jason Segel, and it's called Shrinking,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Yeah, Harrison
hilarious.
Ford as well, right?
Yeah, Harrison Ford. I've mentioned it before, but I'm just going to tell you, watching Harrison Ford singing in a car, that's all you need. That's the show right there.
Fair enough.
Um, I think that's all since the last time we spoke. Of course, more has come out about Bruce Willis and, his dementia, and he's really having a hard time. His family's having a hard time. And I think he was out in public for the very first time recently. And his wife has asked people, like reporters, please don't yell yippee-ki-yay at him because it's like really confusing for him.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, and maybe just don't paparazzi and yell stuff to get him his turn to take the picture, because
Yeah.
like the most frustrating part is now they will, sadly, because she requested that,
There's going to be
it might
some
actually
jerk.
happen more. Yeah.
I know, which is really sad. And the whole situation is just, he was this massive, massive action hero. And now it's like,
And musician. I mean,
and
we have an entire
that's true.
episode on the
That is
return of
true.
Bruno,
That is
which I
true.
have on vinyl, tape, and CD.
It's just, it just shows money doesn't matter. Fame, celebrity doesn't matter. Things will impact you no matter who you are.
I mean, health can take anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, you hear of people who are in good shape and suddenly just have a heart attack. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no guarantees, and no one is immune. Uh,
I
and it
know. I think we just think
we
of
try to do everything we
celebrities.
can.
We
Yeah,
think
like, oh, they've
celebrities
got
and we
all the
think,
money.
oh, they've got all the money. There's nothing that can touch them. And then, you see him and you're like, gosh, that's so sad.
Yeah, and this isn't something that sometimes you hear about somebody in Hollywood dealing with stuff that is brought on by a hard lifestyle or addiction or something. This just just your brain doing it, deciding to do something.
Yeah. Yeah. But um yeah, I think that's all I've got for you.
Yeah, I started watching The Mandalorian. It's been very interesting. They're kind of taking a new style with it this year, which is kind of fun. If you haven't seen the Book of Boba Fett and you're only watching The Mandalorian, you need to go watch. I think the 6th or 7th episode of Boba Fett, because it's all about the Mandalorian, or you'll be very confused because it kind of bridges season 2 and season 3. So I've had
Okay.
friends who literally texted me and they were like, what? Why is Grogu back? It was like,
Hmm.
oh, we got to go watch this other show. And it's so weird because even they do a little recap at the beginning of each episode, kind
Hmm.
of like, but they did not recap the stuff that happened in Book of Boba Fett. It was
Oh,
very
okay.
strange. It was strange. It was a weird oversight. And like, I get a lot of people watch all the Star Wars stuff, but not everybody does.
Hmm.
And so that felt really weird, but that's been enjoyable. I've made it to my least favorite part of most rewatches of some of my favorite shows. I'm on season 7 of Bones now, and they finally, got the two main characters together,
Hmm.
and that is usually when the will they or they won't they thing happens so often in television shows, and often is kind of a big change in tone and direction. And I it happened so abruptly in this one that it almost felt they were like, well, we've put it off for so long, we're gonna take the show in that direction. So I've it's been hard because I usually can just keep plowing through episodes, and there's just a different tone in season 7, so that's been a little bit of a bummer as well. But I've rewatched Star Trek Enterprise, which is the
Oh.
goofiest of all Star Treks, starring Scott Bakula. It is the only Star Trek Enterprise that has like a modern theme song, which is sort of like Space Country. It's very like seriously, it feels a lot like the opening to Firefly, and it always throws me off. But it's a very interesting, one of the Star Treks where it's way back when they first, exploring space.
Hmm.
And it's pre all the people, it's hundreds of years before that. But uh, it there's things I really like about it, but it's also a very different feel. So it's been nice to kind of drop into that. I've been trying to get myself to dive back into Picard because season 3 is coming out, but I was so underwhelmed with season 1 and 2 that I'm just not as excited. And they decided that, like, oh, we're just gonna make this entire thing about the next generation. So this is just the next generation cast, everyone. I was like, well, I kind of wanted to see a different story, but just like the Star Wars stories with like Obi-Wan, they're like, no, we got to make it about everybody else again. So that's a little disappointing. So yeah, that's what I've been plowing through. And it is basketball tournament time, which is one of my
Hmm.
favorite times of the year. And
Hmm.
I think even if you are somebody who's not into sports, you don't watch basketball, college basketball. I mean, for me, I obviously love basketball. I do high school sports announcing for basketball. Uh, so it's something that I care about. But when we get to the tournament time, like stories that come out from these games in the last seconds, and like, just today you had Jim Boeheim, who has over 1,000 wins as a coach and has coached for 47 years, been a national title contender. And basically, in a press conference after the game, he said, "Yeah, I gave my retirement speech last week, and nobody noticed." And you're like, "What?" So it becomes this whole like different drama about the stories behind the stories. So it's one of my favorite times of the year. Every night there are championship games and small conferences and schools you've never heard of. So it is one of my favorite sporting types of the year. This 2 weeks before the conference tournaments and then the NCAA tournament. So that's been really fun too.
Sports, 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 sports.
Sports ball, go
And more
team!
sports.
Yeah, but
Oh
it's the
man.
drama and the human experience and all the stuff that goes around it that makes the tournament so much more fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, the underdog stories and schools you've never heard of. My oldest is applying to schools this year, and so I now have like this mini bracket of schools they've applied to that I now am cheering for as well, because the Gophers are not any good. So, oh, you accepted my kid. We may not go there, but I'm still going to cheer for you in the tournament.
Oh man. I remember those college days.
Yeah,
Man.
it's very exciting, but it's also very weird because I did not do the. I applied to one school. How many did you apply to? A lot of schools or no?
I applied one, two, three, like six, and I got into five.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot. It's still. I mean, I just was like, oh, I'm going to go here. So it's been a very different experience, as a parent watching the entire process and way more involved. I think I had to fill out like one 3-page thing
Hmm.
in 1998 to go to college, and now it's like basically applying for like a mortgage, the amount of paperwork you have to do, the stuff you have to submit. So very very interesting change at the
Yeah,
time.
and
And
then
speaking of changes,
uh-huh.
we are doing something different this week with the A side B side, are we not?
Yes, we are. Yeah, so we talked about doing this a couple of weeks ago, and then I can't remember. We ended up I think we did a regular the following week, and then we didn't record last week. So
Right.
we are
We did Richard Belzer, who had just passed away.
That's right. That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. So yes, this week we are going to switch it up. We're flip-flop in the A side, B side, which means I get to do what you typically do, and you're going to do what I typically do. And this week, you actually go first because it's episode 126.
And every time that we do this, it is a reminder just how much more research and detail and fact finding Brooke has to do every week, as opposed to Adam's like, hey, I really liked this movie one time, and here's why. The the fact based part of true crime is a lot more in depth. So again, I've sent all my links to Brooke. They'll be up on our website. There's a lot of detail. I will do my best to cover as many parts of it as I can, but it's not easy to get cross all the T's and dot all the I's, or cross the D's as well. I guess I'm
Well, yeah,
doing that for some
you
reason.
can do that as well.
Yeah, we'll see. So what we're going to talk about on the A side today, and again, I'm kind of cheating because I'm doing a true crime, but it also has something to do with entertainment because I can't really get into true journalism because I would get incredibly overwhelmed. So this one does have to do with entertainment as well. And today we're going to look at the details around the horrible tragedy that was the shooting during the filming of the Western Rush. You may have heard about it. Alec Baldwin was involved. There is a lot of news stories out there to plow through and get all the details, and there's a lot of conflicting information.
Mm-hmm.
So on October 21st of 2021, at the Bonanza Creek Ranch in Bonanza City, New Mexico, which, I mean, could you have a more Western sounding name?
Yeah, seriously.
Bonanza Creek Ranch. Very, very, very stereotypical. On that day, cinematographer Halyna Hutchins was fatally shot, and director Joel Shuza was injured on the set of the film Rust when a live round was discharged from a revolver used as a prop by actor Alec Baldwin. That is the most agreed upon information. Everything
Mm-hmm.
else gets really, really messy.
Mm-hmm.
And the more information you get, the more the less clear it seems to become. So let's start at the beginning. Back in early October of 2021, production began on the film. The New Mexico Film Office was excited and announced that Rust was in production in Santa Fe, with filming scheduled to go into early November 2021. So this incident happened in late October, getting near towards the end of the shooting. That's a horrible. These film shooting when the shooting happened, the shooting of the film, the shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Very confusing. It's weird that we used the same words interchangeably when they made two
something so totally
very,
different.
very, very different.
Yeah.
So we're going to look at some of the people involved. And the first person we're going to look at is Hannah Gutierrez Reed, who was the daughter of a longtime industry armorer, Phil Reed, and she was responsible for overseeing all of the weapons on the set. However, this was only her second film that she had ever been lead armorer on. In addition to that, because it's a smaller film with a tight budget, she also had prop wrangling duties that were part of her armorer duties as well. So she was kind of doing a dual role. Brooke, when we worked in radio, everybody had two jobs, two, three, 4, 5 jobs
right.
at all times.
Right.
On a smaller film, this seemed to happen. On her first film, where she was the armorer, a movie called The Old Way, several crew members complained about her handling of firearms, including an incident where she discharged a weapon without warning. And this movie was one of the hundreds of movies that comes out every year starring Nicolas Cage. He was on set when she fired off the gun and absolutely freaked out. The key grip on the film, Stu Broombaugh, who was on the key grip, told a website called The Wrap, the link is going to be up on our website, that she upset Cage and other crew members by failing to follow basic gun safety protocols, like announcing the arrival and uses of weapons onto the set. And I think we talked about it in a previous episode when I was on a film set for Sugar and Spice way back in 2000. I was there for 2 days. We were filming one scene, but there was a gun involved, and the detail and care and safety protocols that they put into place for that gun were something that blew me away at how detailed and how careful. And I mean, like, the gun was in between, like, shooting the scene. They would literally put it in a lock case.
Yeah.
So it would only come out right before you hit your action, and it would go right back in as soon as you said cut. And to have a cavalier armorer on set would kind of just sounds so foreign. Even that wasn't a huge budgeted film. So Gutierrez Reed fired a gun near the casting crew for a second time in 3 days without warning anyone. And Nicolas Cage yelled, and moms, forgive me, this is a direct quote, "Make an announcement, you just blew my effing eardrums out," which even if you're firing blanks, guns are not quiet, and you
Right.
can
They
do
are
some
a bit
serious
loud.
damage.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got, you know, animals on set and people, and like, what if somebody doesn't know it's not real and runs into something or gets hurt? It's just insane. Nicolas Cage told the assistant director she needs to be let go, and said they're moving too fast. She's a rookie. And on that movie, which was her first movie, Broombaugh said there were multiple issues. Walked onto the set with live rounds instead of blanks. Made no announcement to the crew, which broke established safety protocols.
Whoa.
She tucked pistols under her armpits and carried rifles in each hand that were ready to be used in a scene. Firearms were aimed at people. She turned around, and the pistols that were tucked under armpits were pointing at people, which is the number one thing, even in stage productions that I have done that had a gun. You do not point it directly at the person, even if you are pointing it at the person, you're
Mm-hmm.
not pointing it at the person, because you're standing upstage or something. It looks like you're pointing, but you're never pointing it directly at them. They should
Right.
never truly be in line of sight of the end of the barrel. It is like rule number one.
Mm-hmm.
Again, she mentioned she twice fired guns on the set without giving any warning to the cast and crew. The first time she did, she was actually trying to see if she could startle the horses, which is a
Wow. What?
horrible idea.
Why
Like,
would you do that?
she's like, "Oh, it won't startle the horses. Let me show you." Boom, and fires it up. Like, what? That is a You see that in westerns all the time. Don't fire the gun; it startles the horses. They run off. I mean, come on. The producers of the film The Old Way, this is all her first film before we even get to Rush, of course, when interviewed by The Wrap, which is the website with the link will be on our website, denied the incidents, and they denied that anyone ever asked for her dismissal. Instead, they said, and this is such classic legal speak, one of the producers said, "I have no such recollection of this event on our set. I asked my partners the same. The details on some of these accounts, specifically when it pertains to The Old Way, have been blown out of proportion." Again, word choice while you're using blow. Uh, in January 12th of 2022, Hanny Gutierrez Reed, after charges were mentioned or her involvement was brought into the press, she actually filed suit against a different person, the prop provider, that the ammunition boxes that were brought into set contain both blanks and live ammunition. So as soon as things got out, she tried to move the blame onto the prop person, which again further moves the muddies the waters.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the inexperienced armorer who had issues on both The Old Way and Rust. Who then claims it is the prop provider's fault. But we also have another questionable individual who's had a bad background, and that is assistant director David Halls. In the aftermath of the incident on the set of Rush, former colleagues of Halls reported that he had complaints in 2019 on 2 episodes of the series Into the Dark, in which he disregarded safety protocols by doing things like blocking fire exits and a fire lane. He also had been fired from a film in 2019 after a firearm discharged unexpectedly on set, wounding a crew member. So this guy had already been involved in an on-set shooting that didn't get the press because it only ended in a wounding. So on the film, independent film One Way, one of the crew members warned producers about Hall's disregard for safety measures and said, again, Mom's is his direct quote, "That man is a liability. He's going to fucking kill somebody someday, and you're going to be responsible." There's a
Oof.
lot of foreshadowing happening here for yet another person involved on the set. The Hollywood Reporter reported that a number of complaints raised during another movie's production, The Tiger Rising, which also featured some of the executive producers of Rush, Ryan Donald Smith, Alan Cheney, Emily Hunt Salverson, and Ryan Winterston. On the day of the shooting, so now we're back to the movie Rush, not the
Mm-hmm.
other incidents he's been involved in. According to a police affidavit signed by Detective Joel Cano of the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office, David Halls, an assistant director on the set, had gone outside, taken the gun in question off a cart where it had been placed by our inexperienced armorer, Miss Gutierrez Reed, and handed it to Mr. Baldwin during the rehearsal. First Assistant Director David Halls handed the gun to actor Alec Baldwin while proclaiming "cold gun," which is what you're supposed to announce when a gun has no live rounds and it is going to be discharged. but everyone knows that a gun is on set and will be used. The gun discharged and the bullet struck Mrs. Hutchins in the chest and Mr. Souza in the shoulder as they were lining up a shot. Miss Hutchins was airlifted to a hospital in Albuquerque where she unfortunately passed, and Souza was taken by ambulance to a nearby hospital in Santa Fe and was released the very next day. There's also a legal issue already with Mr. Hall that has been pled out. He reached a plea deal on a charge of negligent use of a deadly weapon on the set of Rush. And the details of that plea deal have not been released, but when somebody is involved in a plea deal, there's usually, at least in my understanding of the legal system as is taught to me by Law and Order, if a plea deal has been agreed to, there's probably something that the prosecution is getting out of that plea deal that is more than simply the plea. Right. There was a conference scheduled for March 8th, but we have not gotten, well, that's not even, so that is today, but I have not heard any details about the conference on that plea deal, which was pending a judge's approval. So we have an inexperienced armorer, Halyna Hutchins. We have a problematic assistant director who has already been on set with multiple safety violations, including an accidental shooting. And we have further complications on the set. The beginning of Rust's production came amidst a potential strike worldwide of the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees over working conditions and low pay. On October 4th of 2021, the IATSE members voted 98.68% in favor of authorizing the strike, with a voter turnout of 98.66% of eligible voters. So basically, if you were in the union, you voted to strike, which is a pretty huge deal. In fact, cinematographer and eventual victim of the shooting, Halyna Hutchins, supported the IATSE when she wrote an Instagram post standing in solidarity with our crew here in New Mexico on Rust. On the set itself, at the same time, crew members were complaining about being mocked for having to drive each day an hour from and to and from the set from their place in Albuquerque. Many crew members said they were not getting paid on time during the filming. A crew member is quoted as saying, "We cited everything from lack of payment for 3 weeks, taking our hotels away despite asking for them in our deals, a lack of COVID safety, and on top of that, poor gun safety and poor on-set safety, period." Before the incident occurred on October 21st, 2 prop guns on the set of Rush had been fired a total of 3 times, so 2 guns, 3 times they've gone off, unintentional. In fact, in a disturbing moment of foreshadowing, Alec Baldwin's stunt double had accidentally fired 2 blanks when he was told a prop gun was cold earlier in rehearsals. In another incident, the film's prop master, not Hannah Gutierrez Reed, but who she was assisting, shot herself in the foot with a blank round. Now, blank round, it does not, in my understanding, I am not an armorer, but stuff still comes out. So you have, and I believe, if I remember correctly, the Brandon Lee shooting was actually a faulty blank that the blank, part of the casing fired and hit him. Yeah. So things can still come out. You still can't mess around when you're dealing with a gun that could fire something that is potentially, fired at that speed and with that much potential danger.
Right.
The producers often claimed that, as producers often do, the producers of Rust claimed that many of these reported events did not occur or they could not be remembered, and in fact got 24 other crew members to sign an affidavit claiming that none of these things actually happened. On the day of the shooting itself, there was another issue. On October 21st, there was a protest by 7 unionized members of the film's crew who collected their belongings at approximately 6 a.m. and walked out. They claimed they were told to leave the set, with the producer threatening to call the police, and they were replaced. According to a statement given to officers and to TheWrap.com, link on that article and all of our sources are available on A-Side, B-Side Podcast.square.site by a, of course, anonymous insider. Several crew members took a number of prop guns offset that day including the firearm involved in the incident, to pass the time shooting at beer cans with live ammunition.
Oh my gosh.
After lunch break, the prop guns had been returned. It is unclear if the guns were ever checked, if they had been, if bullets had been added, or if the live ammunition had been taken out of the guns before rehearsal began again. On October 26th of 2021, the Santa Fe County District Attorney said that these claims that the guns were taken off and used to shoot beer cans could not be proven and may be unfounded. But again, an entire muddling of the waters and making this incredibly disappointing and horrific situation even harder to figure out what truly happened.
Yeah.
So we've got incidents on the set. We've got the assistant director who's already been involved in safety issues and a accidental shooting in other films, inexperienced armorer. But the name that most people know when it comes to this incident is Alec Baldwin and his role in the incident. So on the day of the shooting, Mr. Baldwin was rehearsing a scene that involved cross-drawing a revolver and pointing it toward the camera lens. The director, Joel Souza, told a detective investigating the shooting, according to filings in the court. The Bonanza Creek Ranch, where the shooting took place, was was inside a structure depicting a 19th century wooden church. During rehearsals of the cross draw, the gun discharged and a bullet struck Miss Hutchins in the chest and Mr. Souza in the shoulder, as we mentioned before. On December 2nd of 2021, Alec Baldwin spoke out in his first interview following the shoot, telling ABC News' George Stephanopoulos that he had no idea how a live bullet got into the set of his film, but that he didn't pull the trigger on the firearm. He also said he didn't believe he would face criminal charges for the tragedy. Then, nearly a year later, in November of 2022, Baldwin himself filed a lawsuit over the fatal shooting, alleging negligence of one of the several of the film's crew members. The complaint, which named the Western's first assistant director, David Halls, the armorer, Anna Gutierrez Reed, and then ammunition supplier and prop master as defendants as well, filed the lawsuit followed the previous year by the film's script supervisor. So where do we stand now? We've got all of these potential issues, this history of not safety on multiple filming locations. And now we have got actual charges filed. Mm-hmm. So on January 19th of 2023, just about 2 months ago, prosecutors announced that Baldwin and Gutierrez Reed would each be charged with 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter. No charges will be filed in the shooting of the director, Joel Souza, the district attorney's office said. Then about 2 weeks later, on January 31st, the charges were officially filed, claiming that Baldwin and Gutierrez Reed failed to correct reckless safety violations in their roles as producer and armorer, respectively, and that Baldwin had his finger inside the trigger and the trigger was pulled, contradicting his statements that he never pulled the trigger. Of course, as we go through any legal issue, there are countersuits and motions that have been filed. On February 7th, Baldwin's attorney filed a motion seeking to disqualify the special prosecutor, Andrea Reeb, who had investigated the fatal shooting due to her role as a member of the New Mexico House of Representatives. There was a law that had been passed involving separation of powers provision in the New Mexico Constitution, and said that she could not simultaneously both be a legislature and a special prosecutor and hold judicial power. On February 10th, Baldwin's attorney filed a motion claiming the gun enhancement charge, which had been added to the manslaughter charges, was misapplied. The legal team filed the motion arguing that the 5-year gun enhancement didn't apply at the time of the shooting because the law was actually enacted after the shooting took place. It was a legal error under their opinion because the incident occurred in October of 2021, and the current version of the law did not take effect until May of 2022. Due to this, the court drops the gun enhancement on the charges, and in February 23rd, about 2 weeks ago, Alec Baldwin pled not guilty and waived his first court appearance. He was supposed to virtually appear in court. A district judge also issued an order setting conditions of his release, including that he must not possess any firearms, not consume alcohol, and have no contact with any potential witnesses unless it's related to the filming of the movie, because the movie is still not finished and it may never be. Halls also filed a waiver of his first appearance that same day and pled not guilty to his charge as well. But all of this obstructs the fact that someone lost their life in what could have been a easily avoided situation if people had followed their rules. And that brings us to Halyna Hutchins. And Halyna Hutchins has an amazing story that feels like it is a Hollywood story if it wasn't real. Filmmakers described Hutchins as a skilled cinematographer with an artistic vision who was deeply committed to her work. According to her personal website, she grew up on a Soviet military base in the Arctic Circle. She studied economics in Ukraine before switching to journalism at Kiev National University. She later attended the American Film Institute Conservatory in Los Angeles. She had moved to Los Angeles to focus on filmmaking. She took roles as in production and fashion photography. She was associate producer for World's Tallest Man, a 2006 film about Leonard Standick by Wild Pictures. The film appeared on the Discovery Channel. In 2010, she graduated from the UCLA TFT Professional Program in Producing. And in Los Angeles, she met Bob Primes, a cinematographer, who encouraged her to apply to the American Film Institute, where he was a teacher. She was accepted and began studying there in 2013 for a 2 years master's program, which she graduated in 2015. Her thesis project, titled Hidden, made with director Ryan Fazard, was screened at the LA Shorts Fest and the Cameron International Film Festival, the AFI Fest, and the Austin Film Festival. In 2018, she was one of the first 8 female cinematographers participating in the Fox Director of Photography Lab program, which was established to provide greater opportunities for women cinematographers. And in 2019, just 2 years before the shoot, she was named one of the top 10 up-and-coming directors of photography who are making their mark by American cinematography. She was director of photography on Adam Egypt Mortimer's 2020 film Arch Enemy, and he said of her that her taste and sensibility of what is cinematic were a huge asset for executing our style. Her AFI training and her skill with the math of LUT settings gave us the best texture I've found in shooting digital. By all accounts, Halyna Hutchins was a rising star within the cinematography and filming industry. And in February 15th of this year, her family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against crew members and producers, including Mr. Baldwin, accusing them of reckless conduct, cost-cutting measures that endangered the crew. That was February 15th of 2022. Apologies. Part of the settlement that was announced in October, Ms. Hutchins' husband will become an executive producer on the film. So where does that leave us? Well, it's basically because the camera was not rolling when the incident occurred. They were simply setting up the shot. They were rehearsing and nothing was running. We will likely never know the truth about if the trigger was pulled and by whom. However, the many issues on the set of Rush make it feel like this was an incredibly avoidable tragedy that had so many actors involved, so many individuals involved with previous issues, that it feels much like we find on when we're talking about these true crime stories on the B side. And Brooke, you often will mention how many times things could have been stopped years before it got to the ultimate tragic event. And in this one, it seems like there were so many red flags and so many attempts in the past and near misses that should have stopped this from happening. But because things were not followed through, because producers continually said, oh, that didn't happen, or we don't have record of that, it eventually became something that an incident that no one could deny. It may be impossible to truly know what has happened. We can be absolutely sure that this tragedy should never have occurred, and hopefully will lead to new rules and more adherence to the safety regulations that Hollywood has already set in place so something like this never happens again. And that is the A side.
Well done. Well done. Thank you, Adam.
Seriously, there's so many details and so many big words. Like, I wouldn't go back to just like, hey, remember when Ewoks had their own movie? That was kind of cool.
So I got to do the the fun side this week, I guess you could say. Um, I got to do what you normally do when you're watching a TV show and you're like, "Hey, I like that person. I think I'm going to look them up." So, recently there's been all this talk about Pamela Anderson and her new documentary or biography, whatever, on Netflix, and it got me to thinking about what Hulu had done when they released the Pam and Tommy um, uh, mini series, I guess you could call it. Um, and at first, I think a lot of people were kind of upset about this mini series. And I watched it, and it did not paint Pam in a bad picture at all. It actually made her the victim. But the actor that played Tommy in that that series is Sebastian Stan.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to thinking
Looking
about
very, very different than you've ever seen him before.
they did a very good job making him look like Tommy Lee. But I got to thinking about Sebastian Stan, and he's an actor that I really, 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 really like. And for some people, you say Sebastian Stan, they immediately know who he is. And other people, you say Sebastian Stan, and they're like, who? And I'm like, Winter Soldier and MCU. Who? So,
Oh, Bucky. What?
right, Bucky Barnes. So I felt
Is he a
like
sports ball person?
it sounds like he could be, but I
Yeah,
felt like that would be a perfect that guy from that show / movie.
absolutely.
So Sebastian Stan was born in Romania on August 13th of 1982. And I've actually seen videos where he has shocked fans, because I think people forget that, because he speaks so without an accent. He's been in America for so long that he shocks fans when he starts speaking Romanian.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Hmm. So he's born August 13th, 1982 in Constanta, Romania. So his parents divorced when he was 2 years old. And then when he was 8 years old, Sebastian and his mom, Georgetta, and I am probably going to butcher this, and if you are in Romania, I am so sorry. Uh, Georgetta Orlovshi and her son Sebastian moved to Vienna, Austria, where she was employed as a pianist following the Romanian Revolution. When he was 12, they moved to Rockland County, New York, after his mom ended up marrying the headmaster of a school in the United States. He was actually raised in the Romanian Orthodox Church.
Hmm.
So his early years at Rockland, he goes out for theater, which I mean kind of makes sense because obviously there's music and arts in the family already, with his mom being a pianist, so they've already
Absolutely.
got an appreciation for the arts. So he goes out for drama, and he ends up starring in productions in school, including Cyrano de Bergerac. Adam, you'll like this one, Little Shop of Horrors.
Who did he play? Did it say who he played?
It did not. It did
Because I
not.
could totally see him being the dentist, but I could also see him being, Seymour Crawford
I really
as a
hope
little
he's
kid.
Seymour. Seymour.
Yeah.
He also starred in West Side Story. He attended the Stage Door Minor Summer Camp, where he was cast in a whole bunch of productions during summer camp. So he obviously has found something that he truly enjoys, and he's sticking with it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's after these camp productions that he decides, this is my thing. This is what I got to do. He starts applying to several universities' acting programs. He's accepted and attends Rutgers University's Mason Gross School of Arts, which gave him the opportunity to spend some time abroad. So he ends up going to London, and he spends a year at Shakespeare's Globe Theatre in London.
Lucky. So lucky. I spent a week there and I would have stayed for the rest of my life.
He graduates from Rutgers in 2005. Well, while he's in the midst of like studying and traveling and all that, he actually becomes a citizen in 2002. To his name, he has 114 credits. That's some of them are movies, television shows, videos, like music videos. So he's constantly keeping busy. In 1994, it was after a film role in the film 71 Fragments of Chronology of Chance, his career really, really starts to pick up. In 2003, even before he's graduated from college, he ends up landing a role on Adam, probably a show that you really love, Law and Order.
Doesn't shock. I I've probably seen him in an episode. I was just watching. It's amazing how you rewatch old stuff and you see people that you're like, oh my goodness.
So of course the career goes from there. He's in a couple of films called Tony and Tina's Wedding, The Architect, the Covenant, and then he gets the dream role. He lands a recurring role on Gossip Girl as Carter, and that begins
Oh,
in 2007. In 2009, he gets the lead role in a series called Kings as Jack Benjamin. In 2010, he gets a role in the very controversial Darren Aronofsky ballet thriller Black Swan. He's also in the movie Hot Tub Time Machine. I think we've talked about that one.
yeah, yeah. Kings. I'm sorry.
Uh-huh.
Kings was the update of the story of King David that was set in like modern time. I
Ah,
remember that.
okay.
It was like it had like a huge, like an amazing cast. Like Ian McShane was in it. It's updated. Sorry, I just like I had to figure that out because I remember when that came out. It was very controversial because they
Mm-hmm.
updated some stuff. They were taking the story, but then like not making it obviously biblical.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting.
So, in 2011, I guess you could say things really, really pick up for him because he's cast as Bucky Barnes in the film Captain America, the First Avenger, of course, based in the MCU. It was his first time in the MCU, but it was not part of the 9-picture contract that he ends up getting. I think it was like later, it was like, okay, he did a really good job on this role, whatever. He said a month after the film was released, he was still struggling to pay rent.
Oh,
In 2012, he gets a starring role in the thriller Gone. He also stars in the supernatural horror film The Apparition, and then he begins working on Once Upon a Time, which I absolutely loved on ABC, as Jefferson, aka the Mad Hatter. Once Upon a Time basically put all of your childhood fairy tales and threw them in this one town and put like this weird
yeah.
spin on them. You had like Rumpelstiltskin, you had the Mad Hatter, you had the Evil Queen, I mean, it was just everything.
It's like
There
the
was,
multiverse of fairy tales
yeah,
in all in one city. Yeah.
yeah. He gets a recurring role on Once Upon a Time as the Mad Hatter. And then he did such a great job on there. He was actually supposed to be cast in a spinoff for Once Upon a Time. It was Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, but he had gone back and signed up with the MCU, and so he couldn't do it.
Yeah. Probably a good choice to get the 9-picture deal.
Yeah.
Probably not going to have as much trouble paying rent when you get
Right.
when you get those checks rolling in.
Right. In 2012, he also appeared on the USA Network miniseries Political Animals as a troubled gay son of the former First Lady. He was actually nominated for a Critics' Choice Television Award for Best Supporting Actor in a Movie miniseries. In 2013, Sebastian Stan plays Hal Carter in the Roundabout Theater's production of Picnic. Do you know that one?
I don't.
It's William Ing's Picnic.
I'll have to look it up.
Well, now it's time to go back into the MCU. So in 2014, he reprises his role as Bucky Barnes, aka now known as the Winter Soldier, in the first of his 9-movie contract, Captain America: The Winter Soldier. He dashes out of the MCU for a bit in 2015 and stars as Joshua Brummel and Ricky and the Flash. Do you remember that one? That one had Meryl Streep's daughter.
I don't.
It,
There's so much to watch.
yeah, yeah.
That's why I have 3 TVs that I could watch 3 times as much stuff.
So he jumps back also later in 2015. He jumps back into the MCU by making a cameo. He's in Ant-Man and he makes a cameo in Captain America: Civil War in 2016. And then he also is in Lucky Logan. Did you ever watch that one? Steven Soderbergh's
Yeah,
Lucky
yeah.
Logan.
I thought I was really excited about it, and it's just kind of okay.
Now this one, I thought he killed this role in I believe it's 2017. He ends up portraying Jeff Galooly from the I Tanya biopic, which was Jeff Galooly was Tanya Harding's boyfriend, manager, whatever. But he played a really good role in that one.
He was the thug.
Yeah, basically. He's back in 2018 as the Winter Soldier in both Black Panther in a cameo and Avengers: Infinity War. He jumps back out of the MCU for a bit and stars with Nicole Kidman in the film Destroyer. Okay, I'm not gonna go through his whole entire 114 credits. So we basically know, okay, so he was in the MCU a whole lot. In 2019, he actually replaces his MCU co-star Chris Evans in a film, The Devil All the Time, which premiered on Netflix in 2020. He's now on Disney Plus, because Disney Plus now carries all of the MCU, and of course they've got their TV shows, and it's Falcon and Winter Soldier, which the next season I guess it'll be Captain America and the Winter Soldier. In 2022, he starred as Tommy Lee on the biographical miniseries Pam and Tommy. He actually got a nomination for a Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actor in a limited or anthology series, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen, there's one I haven't mentioned, which I'm going to mention right now. He actually starred in 2022 before, I think they came out right about the same time, within like, I don't know, a couple of months on Hulu. There is a thriller film called Fresh.
Again, there's so much out. I feel like a bad media file. I don't know half of it.
You have to see, all I will say is if you have a weak stomach, maybe don't watch Fresh.
Oh yeah, I think I've heard. Yeah, I that's not one that's going to be on my list.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I already got enough, Advil PM induced nightmares. I don't need to be added to it.
I love when you do that guy from that show and you bring out some like philanthropic efforts that they do. Well, he's a supporter of a lot of charities, including one called Our Big Day Out. It's a nonprofit based in Romania that helps provide children with a higher quality of life. In February of 2018, he actually thanked fans on behalf of the organization for participating in a fundraiser, for participating in fundraising and awareness on Instagram. He's also been associated with the Ronald McDonald House. In 2020, he actually attended the charity's first virtual gala, because of course 2020 we were in the midst of COVID, and he did that
Yeah,
with
almost 3 years, 3 years to the day.
I know. He attended that virtual gala with his co-star, his Marvel co-star Anthony Mackie. Some other charities that Sebastian Stan supports include Dramatic Need and Save the Children. His grandmother is actually makeup mogul Anastasia Soari of Anastasia of Beverly Hills.
Oh,
He is actually best friends with his Marvel co-star Anthony Mackie.
oh,
His mom missed his scene at the end of Black Panther because she didn't stay through the end credits. Somebody did not tell mom, you always have to stay through the end credits of a Marvel movie.
it was pretty early on. I mean, like that was phase 1 or 2. Not everybody knew
Yeah,
that.
but Black
Now it's
Panther,
like,
by Black Panther, we knew.
yeah, we should.
By Black Panther,
I'm just
I
trying.
get
I'm
Captain
trying to get mom
America,
and out here.
I get the first Avengers, but by Black Panther, we knew.
Yeah, we should
He's done the weird acting dynamic of playing a brother and a boyfriend to the same actress, Hayden Panettiere. He played her brother in the movie The Architect, and then he played her boyfriend in her music video Wake Up Call.
Oh, and wasn't Margot Robbie in I, Tonya as well?
Yes. Yep.
So he's worked with her twice. It's very different roles as well.
Yes, 100%. So there you go. That is my take on Adam's side of the whole entertainment, that guy from that show, that guy from that movie. That is all about Sebastian Stan. And there you go. That is the B-side.
I had no idea about how much of so much of his background. I mean, that's really cool.
About his
We
background?
talked about, yeah, we've talked about two individuals today, Halyna Hutchins and Sebastian Shaw, who are both from the former like Eastern Bloc countries, came to America. Classic like stereotypical immigrant American story that you would never have known. I mean, he plays such a like kid from Queens so well as Bucky Barnes in Captain America.
Yeah. It was I gotta say, everything I have seen him in, he has done a very good job. And so like he runs the gamut, because from going from like Tommy Lee to Bucky Barnes to the character in Fresh to the only one I haven't really seen is Gossip Girl, because I've never watched Gossip Girl, but I mean I've heard that he did a very good job in that. So
yeah, and I'm gonna have to find his episode of Law and Order, because that seems like a good end of the day for Adams to watch an old episode of Law and Order.
but there you go. That is the B-side.
And of course, if you want details about either of the A side or the B side today, all of our sources will be up on our website, A side, B side podcast.square.site. When you go on there, you can also site. I don't know why I said seat.
I was gonna let it go.
Site.
I was gonna let it go.
Yeah, but I could. It's like when I did a piano recital when I was like 6 years old. I missed one note, but no one would have known except I went, ah man, in the middle of playing the song, and my parents are like, if you don't draw attention to the mistake, people might not know. And I'm like, yeah, probably never gonna do that. Go to our website. Once you're on the website, you can find us on all of your favorite streaming services. It helps us a lot if you like, share, review us on those sites, whether it is the Apple Podcast, which is one of our number ones, or Spotify, or Stitcher, or there's some other ones on there. We've got merch on there as well. Got very stealable coffee mugs. If you're looking for some coffee mugs that people might want to take, or you want to get a T-shirt, I still wear one of our first hoodies. I wear that quite often, and every time I wear it out, people comment on it. So if you want to meet complete strangers, buy some of our merch, because they will come up and talk to you and say, hey, it's a really cool shirt. You can also buy Brooke a coffee, because she's got to edit all this together. And as you heard, I had so much stuff that I tried to pack into the A side this week on Rust that there's going to be a lot of times I mispronounced or said things twice that have to be cleaned up and posted. If you didn't hear a bunch of that stuff, it's because Brooke's really good at editing this podcast down. Brooke, anything else that I have forgotten?
No, I think you nailed it all. Don't forget, we do
Excellent.
have a Patreon, but I think that
Yes, we have a Patreon as well. We're also on YouTube, so you can follow us on there if you would like to. YouTube is great because if you have the app on your phone, you can minimize the app, but often the audio will still playing, and it doesn't always work for every app to do that. So I like that YouTube does that. So that's one option for you. But obviously, I think a lot of our listeners are health nuts and out there just practicing for marathons. So we'll get you through those 26.2 miles with the podcast.
But there you go. That's episode 126. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Brooke.